Okay. Topic tonight is, or this Just Chatting stream is the layoffs at Bungie. So as you guys know, some of you guys might know, Bungie laid off on July 31st. 220 of our roles will be eliminated, representing roughly 17% of our studio's workforce. This is kind of a lot. Now, Bungie had over 1,000 developers working for them. Mostly on, Destiny 2, their new expansion, the Final Shape, and they're also working on Marathon, which is like an extraction shooter. I don't really play extraction shooters very much. I think the only extraction game I really ever played was in Call of Duty, and you were just extracting money from the zone. And that's not really an extraction shooter. I don't even know if they still have that in Warzone. But that's really the only mode I've ever played. It's basically supposed to be like Tarkov, and whatever. That's pretty cool. I don't know how Marathon's going to turn out. They're also working on 2 other projects, which we'll get to in a bit. But I just want to read through this statement, and we'll talk about it because apparently the leadership at Bungie needs an overhaul. And yeah, I'm going to talk about my experience with Bungie back in the day because I love this developer. Back when they were developing Halo 2 and Halo 3, I want to talk about that. I don't know too much about the development of those games, but I think they also had trouble development. So, all right. So this is from Pete Parsons. He is the CEO of Bungie, and he's under some criticism recently. But let's read this. Okay, so this morning I'm sharing with all of you some of the most difficult changes we've ever had to make as a studio. Due to rising costs of development and industry shifts, as well as enduring economic conditions, it has become clear that we need to make substantial changes to our cost structure and focus development efforts entirely on Destiny and Marathon. Okay, now that's kind of understandable. They are service games, and one thing Bungie has always been good at doing is creating service games. You look at Halo 2, Halo 3, Reach, Destiny 2. They have done a very good job of setting standards for multiplayer games throughout the years. Destiny was really one of its kind. Yeah, Destiny was really almost one of its kind when it released. I think Warframe probably was also very similar to Destiny around that time. But Bungie set a very good standard for loot shooters, and it was addicting. I'm not gonna lie, it was very addicting. But Bungie knows how to have an ongoing revenue service for a shooter game, or just for video games in general. So then focusing on Destiny and Marathon, that makes a lot of sense. However, so this means that beginning today, 220 of our roles will be eliminated, representing 70% of our studio's workforce. That sucks. And honestly, I hope everyone who was laid off lands on their feet. I hope they get new jobs. It's very tough out there in the gaming industry to get a job right now because everyone's laying people off. And it's a lot of different issues like growth or lack of growth. I think a lot of companies thought they were going to grow quicker than they thought. In fact, there might have been some regression due to people, due to the COVID-19 and whatnot. So these actions will affect every level of the company, including most of our executive and senior leader roles. Probably not a bad thing. Today is a difficult and painful day, not for you. Especially for our departing colleagues, all of which have made important and valuable contributions to Bungie. Our goal is to support them with the utmost care and respect. For everyone affected by this job reduction, we will be offering a generous exit package, including severance, bonus, and health coverage. All right, that is pretty good. They're going to get health insurance for maybe 2 or 3 months, I guess, so they can land on their feet. But it could take them a whole other year to get another job in the gaming industry. With all the layoffs now, I don't know if things have gotten easier for developers. This has been a bad year. This has been a brutal year for game development, unfortunately. Okay, I realize all of this hard news, especially following the success we have seen with the Final Shape, but as we've navigated the broader economic realities of the last year, and after exhausting all other mitigation options, this has become a necessary decision to refocus our studio and our business with more realistic goals and viable financials. We are committing to 2 other major changes today that we believe will support our focus, leverage Sony's strengths, and create new opportunities for Bungie talent. Okay, this is where it's going to get kind of... I think a lot of people are a little on edge about this, but this might not be a bad thing. First, we are deepening our integration with Sony Interactive Entertainment, working to integrate 155 of our roles, roughly 12%, into SIE, or Sony Interactive Entertainment, over the next few quarters. SIE has worked tirelessly with us to identify roles for as many of our people as possible, enabling us together to save a great deal of talent that would otherwise have been affected by the reduction in force. Second, we are working with PlayStation Studios leadership to spin out one of our incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new sci-fi science fantasy universe, to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue its promising development. So they pretty much announced that they're working on another game, it's an action game set in a science fantasy universe. That's such a broad term. I'm not excited about it right now. The studio hasn't even formed. Okay, that's, whatever. I'm not, it is what it is. I'm not really excited about whatever this project is. I haven't seen it. Nobody's seen it. I do wish the developers success, though, in developing it, and I hope they have a smooth development process, because we don't want them to have any trouble with game development, because that can run up the bill as well. Let's unpack how we ended up in this position. It's important to understand how we got here. For over 5 years, it has been our goal to ship games in 3 enduring global franchises. To realize that ambition, we set up several incubation projects, each seeded with senior development leaders from our existing teams. We eventually realized this model structured our talent too thin. Let me rephrase that. We eventually realized that this model stretched our talent too thin too quickly. It also forced our studio support structures to scale to a larger level than we could realistically support, given our 2 primary products in development, Destiny and Marathon. Additionally, in 2023, our rapid expansion ran headlong into broad economic slowdown and sharp downturn in the games industry. Our quality missed with Destiny 2 Lightfall, and the need to give both the final shape of Marathon the time needed to ensure both projects deliver at quality our players expect and deserve. We were overly ambitious, our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running in the red. So basically what that means is, I think the studio just had too many people working on big projects, and they just didn't really know what to do. This is something I've been saying for a while, that the gaming industry isn't really experiencing any growth. At least the console industry or the AAA industry, it's not really... There's really no growth in this in the industry right now. PlayStation and Xbox, they're mostly selling consoles to the same group of people that they've been selling them to for the past 20 years, and that's not good. The AAA market hasn't really seen an increase in an audience. So, and game development costs keep going up. I've said this before, but games like God of War Ragnarok and Spider-Man, they cost over $200 million to make. I think Spider-Man 2 costs I think over $300 million to make. So game development is getting vastly more expensive. The games are getting more complex. And, in Destiny, Destiny's situation is a little different. Well, not different. Obviously, the economic impact of Destiny 2, they have a lot of developers that worked at Bungie. They had over 1,000 developers at the studio. That's a lot for a studio like Bungie that is only making one service game, which is Destiny 2. They didn't really bother to develop anything else in the middle of this whole plan that they had for Destiny 2. Marathon might have started development too late. And also, I think leadership is also responsible for this. Bungie's leadership has always been a mess. Even back during the Halo 2 and Halo 3 days, even Halo days, even the Halo Combat Evolved days. We'll talk about that in a second. Additionally, in 2023, a rapid expansion ran headlong into broad, sharp downturn. Quality miss. Oh, okay, yeah, I read that. Yeah, okay. After this new trajectory became clear, we knew we had to change our course and speed, and we did everything we could to avoid today's outcome. Even with exhaustive efforts undertaken across our leadership and product teams to resolve our financial challenges, these steps were simply not enough. It's never going to be enough. The only thing that would have been enough is if Lightfall and the Final Shape, those Destiny 2 expansions, sold infinitely better than sold infinitely better than what they sold. The success of those games had to be far bigger than what Bungie was hoping to be. And I think Destiny 2's been on like a downward trend in terms of popularity, which is unfortunate. This will be a challenging time at Bungie, and we'll need to help our team navigate these changes in the weeks and months ahead. This will be a hard week, and we know that our team will need time to process, to ask questions, and absorb this news. Today and over the next several weeks, we will host team meetings and town halls, team breakout sessions, and private individual sessions to ensure we are keeping our communication open and transparent. Bungie will continue to make great games. We still have over 850 team members building Destiny and Marathon, and we will continue to build amazing experiences that exceed our players' expectations. There will be a time to talk about our goals and projects, but today is not that day. Today, our focus is on supporting our people. Pete. Oh, yeah. I was watching Loco from Stream Square today. She said, look how he signs this. And maybe she said it. Maybe someone else said it. I don't know. Oh, but look how he signs this with, capital P, Pete. Like, he's relatable. He's one of us. No, he's not. He's the CEO of this company. So there's like a lot to unpack here. And I think the issue is that this Bungie just had too many people working for the studio. Destiny 2 probably wasn't making enough money to support that studio. Having over 1,000 people working out your studio on 2 games, one of which isn't even out yet, it can run up the bill. And, senior leadership is responsible for this probably on some level. I think they are responsible for it. I think Pete Parsons, I think he's also responsible for it as well. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to Bungie in the future, but one thing's for certain, they're going to become more integrated. They even said it in here. They're going to become more integrated into SIE, into Sony. And this might not necessarily be a bad thing. Like, we always dread having the big company buy the smaller company. We always dread having that bigger company just absorb the practices of that bigger company. But Sony probably needs to rein in Bungie a little bit here. Bungie has always been a mess of a developer. Always. This is nothing new. Looking back on it in like the Halo days, like Halo Combat Evolved, I think changed what it needed to be, like maybe a year or something like that before the game actually launched. I think it was like originally a third-person shooter. It was like an RTS. You can even go out online on YouTube and find trailers of the original Halo, and it looks similar to what Halo Combat Evolved turned out to be, but it was not. But it was still a little different. And Halo Combat Evolved really didn't come together till like the last few months of development. Like they crunched the hell out of that game, and somehow they ended up making one of the best Xbox titles of all time. Like the first 5 levels of Halo Combat Evolved were some of the best levels, I think, in Halo history. Like Assault on the Control Room, which is like probably one of the last good levels. Well, one of the not one of the last good levels, but one of the most memorable levels in Halo history. Everyone loved that level. That level was massive for its time. And then I remember, Halo 2. Halo 2 had development issues as well. Apparently, I think some said that the game was supposed to be out in 2003, and it got delayed until 2004. I don't know if that was true, but I remember I had an Electronic Gaming Monthly magazine that had Halo 2 on the cover. And I remember Bungie was promising all this stuff, like the Covenant would be, more animalistic or whatever, and they'd be jumping on walls and they'd be leaping around in the environments. None of that was really ever true, at least not from what I remember. And then they also said that the Chief would have like equipment that he could use in fights. Nothing ever came of that. I think that they pushed that back to Halo 3. So Halo 3 had equipment, but Bungie was overpromising on Halo 2. At least in that EGM article I read. I remember playing through Halo 2. I'm like, man, none of that stuff made it into the game. That's unfortunate. And they kept the Halo 2 single player campaign under wraps until like 2 weeks before the game launched. So I was expecting something bigger and significantly better, but it turned out to be good. Not great, not like Halo Combat Evolved, but one thing I will say about Halo 2 had excellent multiplayer. Like the multiplayer in Halo 2 was amazing. Like there are times where I still jump back into Halo 2 and I'll just run around the levels by myself, just like looking at all the Halo 2 levels and just like, you know, thinking back on memories that I had playing with my friends on those levels. You know, Halo 2 had very good multiplayer. It had matchmaking, it had a rank system, it had multiplayer, it had good multiplayer maps, it had all this great stuff. And I don't think people really cared about how sloppy Bungie was in getting in their development process, because it didn't matter. We were having too much fun. And yeah, I remember levels like Burial Mounds. You know, there was a Warthog there. You could just jump in the Warthog and drive around, and you know, in a Team Slayer game, and you could just like, you know, mess around. And there were you know, Lockdown. I think it was Lockdown. That map has gone through so many revisions over the years. There was Zanzibar Land. Oh my God, Zanzibar was incredible. Like one flag capture. Then they had DLC maps like Terminal. I think Terminal. Yeah, Terminal I think was a DLC map, and the trains would run through the station, and then they had an attic that you could spawn up into. You know, there was a lot of great things about Halo 2. Max Hoberman developed the Halo 2 maps, or he was one of the designers on the Halo 2 maps. I think one of the rules he said was that every map had to be built with like Slayer in mind, and then an objective game type, like one flag capture or bomb or something like that. And yeah, those maps were really good. And it was just, Halo 2 was just such a good time for Bungie. It was like, it was an amazing game. At least in terms of multiplayer. And I think I played that game. It wasn't the only game I played for 3 years straight, but it was the game I consistently played until 2007 when Halo 3 came out. And Halo 3 was also pretty good. It was nothing. I don't think there's ever been a game as big as Halo 3, at least in terms of like hype. Like back then, it was like, you know, the big thing was like finish the fight. And it was a pretty epic game. I enjoyed Halo 3. Some of the single player maps in that game, the single player levels weren't that great, to tell you the truth. But again, it was the multiplayer that really skyrocketed Bungie again. Now the maps weren't as good as Halo 2, but they were still fun to play on. Like it was still, I think this is kind of where Modern Warfare 2 started to take over. But Halo 3 was still pretty good. It was very good, and I do miss the Halo 2, Halo 3 days. Yeah, I miss playing those games with my friend. You know, he would text me at like midnight with just like the words Halo, and we would hop on board Halo. And yeah, we would jump on Halo and play for like till like 2 a.m. in the morning, and you know, we would just play Team Slayer, Team Objective, Team Doubles, and it was fun. And I had a lot of fun, you know, playing Halo. Now this is kind of me reliving the old, you know, glory days of Halo, which sounds like, you know, people are gonna make fun of me for that, but it's true. And this was like Bungie at their peak. They were doing really well. And then they kind of broke off from Microsoft and they started developing Destiny. And they did so with Activision. And it was weird that they wanted to break off from Microsoft because they wanted to break away from like, you know, Big Brother Microsoft or whatever, and be free to do what they wanted. The problem with that was that they're now under Activision's reign, and they had to listen to Activision. And eventually they didn't like that, and they had trouble development with Destiny, and they had trouble getting expansions out and developing content for the game. And they had some trouble with Activision for a bit. And then they broke off from Activision, and they were celebrating that. And for a while, they were independent. And they were doing okay, I guess. But, you know, Destiny was on the decline for a while, for a bit, and then Sony bought them. Now, some people in the industry speculated that Microsoft, you know, they were also negotiating with Microsoft. They wanted to be bought out by Microsoft because I think Microsoft maybe would have offered them more freedom, or you know, they had history with Microsoft. That's probably why. You know, Microsoft was probably more open to them being a multi-platform developer, which they need to be nowadays, which you need to be nowadays. Even PlayStation needs to be a multi-platform developer. Now, some people were saying that when they were bidding, with Microsoft, and you know, they were also talking to Sony, I guess, Microsoft would offer them a higher price, and then Bungie would go back to Sony, and Sony would have to up the price because, you know, they have to, for their shareholders, they need to spend. You know, if Microsoft offers them more than Sony, and Sony buys them for less money than Microsoft offered, they can get in trouble with the shareholders and whatnot, I guess. So Microsoft probably upped the price. So Sony ended up spending like $3.5 billion on Bungie, which does not make sense at all because Bungie doesn't really even make that much money to begin with. Let's see. Was it 3.5 billion? How much? Yeah, they spent like 3.6 billion. Which doesn't make any sense because, you know, Bungie doesn't really even bring in a lot of money to begin with. Especially, you know, Destiny 2 was on the decline during this time. And I have no idea how P. Parsons, you know, talked them into this, or the shareholders talked them into spending this much money, but it's a lot of money. Yeah, let's hear what Jeff Grubb has to say about this whole thing. Herman Hulst runs Bungie now. Now, Herman Hulst is mostly in charge of first-party development at PlayStation. This is something that some people were dreading, I think, online, but this might not be a bad thing. I mean, you have to get your studios in line. Bungie needs to be reined in. You know, when they go off the hook like this, you know, this is what happens. They run in the red and they run up development costs. They have trouble getting out the expansions. Also, they attempted to soften the blow by sending many people from Bungie into SIE instead of just cutting them. I thought the number of jobs lost was going to be closer to 350. Yeah, thank God it wasn't, but still, 200, over 200 is bad enough. I'll put it as far as I know, which isn't everything by a long shot. In time, Bungie will lose its autonomy and will become like any other PlayStation Worldwide studio under SIE and Herman Hulst. And by in time, I just mean this is a process that is starting now, but it is happening. I'll talk about this more on GMM tomorrow. I think we can suss out the answers to most of the questions that people have. Also, I bet we'll get some more reporting by then as well. Listen to Games Mess Mornings on YouTube or Pocket. There was something huge with Marathon next year. So yeah, apparently a lot of people are thinking that Marathon will be big. I don't know how big an extraction shooter is going to be. Extraction shooters could be a little tough to play. They're a little complicated to play, like Tarkov. Although I think Bungie could hopefully come up with a system that will make it easier to play. Maybe? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But some people are, you know, pretty pissed. Pretty pissed about this. Let's see. Bungie CEO Pete Parsons reportedly spent over $2.3 million buying classic cars after the Sony acquisition. This was uncovered the same day he made a statement saying that he laid off 220 employees because the company had been dealing with financial challenges. Yes, the CEO was going out and spending over $2 million on vintage cars, which I just cannot fucking believe. Like, I cannot believe that. You know, you want to talk about an issue in the gaming industry? CEOs get paid a lot of money and they waste a lot of money. And then when it comes to cuts, the people below them get the short end of the stick. They're the ones who have to, you know, go out there and try and survive and get a new job. There was a story of a woman, she worked at Bungie. She was supposed to go on maternity leave next week because she's about to have a baby and she got laid off this week. You know, now this person, you know, has a baby on the way and they have to worry about getting a new job in the gaming industry, which is already very difficult to get a job in because there's been layoffs left and right in this industry. Microsoft laid over 2,000 people, almost 2,000 people from Activision Blizzard King. It's ridiculous. And he's going out and spending millions of dollars on on cars. This is from a person who worked at Bungie, who used to. Coward, you did this. You chose this. I'm already listed as do not work with, and I don't care anymore. You lied to my face, straight to it. You also invited me to come see your new cars 2 days before you laid me off. 2 fucking days. Leave now. You know, this just goes to show that people at the top don't really care all that much about you. They don't. You know, corporations, you know, it's nice to be devoted. I'm glad the people who made who develop games, they are very passionate people. They really are. The passion is there, but game development, video game development, at least that industry, these jobs can be very volatile, and they're not treated very well at all. And I think that's why people aren't getting involved in game development, because this industry is so volatile to the people who actually work in the industry and who develop these games day in and day out. They're the ones who are getting laid off and getting their jobs cut because, a game made money, but it didn't make that much money to make shareholders happy. Sure, they're making profit, but they're not making that much profit where, they can sustain the studio. And this isn't entirely, their fault. I do think a lot of developers, they might overhire sometimes, or, well, not overhire, but they hire a lot of people. And I think maybe it's just too much for them to handle. I really don't know. Right now, the industry just isn't doing well, and Bungie themselves, like I said, they're not doing as good as they were years ago. I'm glad that developers have this passion for developing games, and I'm glad that the final shape turned out to be as good as it was. That's good. That's a good thing. But it's such a tragedy to see that they poured all that love into the game and then they get laid off. And there were a lot of reasons for it. But yeah, maybe Bungie was too big. Maybe they overhired because they thought their game development was going to, or they thought their game was going to grow beyond what they were projecting or what they thought they could make, and it just didn't hit those goals. Because the industry isn't really growing, and that's unfortunate for the workers who are working in the industry, because they're the ones who get hurt by this the most. It's not their fault they got laid off. It's really the fact that the industry is just going down this path of making games bigger and adding so much stuff into the games that the cost of it is going up. And when I say the cost, that means they're hiring more people, and they're just not making, they're not, hitting records, or they're not making as much money as the shareholders want them to make. It sucks. It really does suck. And I hope, like I said, I hope everyone who is laid off finds work in this industry. It's been a very painful year for game development. And I feel really bad for people who work in this industry, who pour all this passion into it, and they don't have a place to work. They can't put food on the table. Pete Parsons doesn't have to worry about putting food on the table. He's going out and spending millions of dollars on on vintage cars that he's probably never going to drive. And, here you have people who are getting laid off who can't put food on the table, or have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from, or where their next paycheck is going to come from, in an industry that already treats them pretty badly, pretty poorly. And I hate it. To tell you the truth, I hate it. And I wish developers would get treated better, than they do. Than they already do. And the thing is, Bungie is going to change now. Bungie's going to be a different developer now. I mean, they were already a different developer since the Halo 2 days, or in the Halo 3 days. And that's fine. They had to evolve into something else, for Destiny. And I think Destiny has had good success. But Destiny itself, especially Destiny 2, is such a big, complex game. They added so many mechanics to the game, and just so much smaller stuff that it's like, just jumping in it now, it's way too complex. We were talking about this in the Streamer Square Discord. I think maybe Dylan brought it up, but there are some games out there that have so many mechanics that you just don't want to get involved in, like World of Warcraft and, Warframe, maybe even Warframe to some extent. And I think Warframe is very good. Warframe is the developers behind Warframe have done a very good job with their game. They give the fans what they want, but still, even then, I remember I was playing that game and I'm like, they've added so much stuff since I started playing this years ago that I don't know if I can keep up. And this goes especially for Destiny 2. I'll jump in Destiny 2 today and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And sometimes these games get too big and ambitious for their own good, and I think that just turns players off. You just can't jump into a game and enjoy it anymore. Especially a game like Destiny. It just gets too complex. That was the nice thing about Halo 2 and Halo 3. You could jump in at any point and play a multiplayer game or jump into a custom game with your friends, and you're having a good time. And these days, I feel like some games just require so much time and energy. Even multiplayer games, like Apex Legends, for example. I've been playing Apex Legends for the last 4 years, and even I don't feel like I could. I played Apex Legends for about 4 years, and I feel like I can barely keep up with some people these days because you have to play so sweaty all the time. Or maybe that's just me getting older. Maybe that's just me getting older and I don't have enough time. Probably that. Which probably explains why I decided to be a variety streamer, so I can just sit down and play games I enjoy, mostly single player games. But yeah, but I think a lot of other people do feel that way. I remember I wanted to play Final Fantasy 14. I think I wanted to give Final Fantasy 14 a try, and I remember reading up on how to craft in the game, and I was just like, oh my God, I wanted to rip my hair out because the process to craft something in the game sounded so complex. I'm like, I don't think I have any interest in doing this. And I think some games are just getting too big. They're getting too complex nowadays for their own good. One thing, I'm not much of a Pokemon player, but when I sat down and played Pokemon, I like the simplicity of it. I liked how simple it was to sit down and enjoy it. Yes, there's a lot to it, but I also kind of enjoyed the depth and the simplicity to it. And that sounds silly, but there's some truth to that. Some games I just want to have fun with, like Super Mario Odyssey. You can go back and watch my previous playthrough of Super Mario Odyssey that I did over the winter, and I had a smile on my face the entire time I played that game. Sometimes I just want to sit down and just have fun with the game. And I don't feel like I want to get too deep into the mechanics of the game and figure out what different things do, because I might get, I'm afraid I'm going to get bored, or it's going to get too complex and it's just going to turn me off. There's times where I wanted to get into World of Warcraft and I felt like it was just too much. Like I had to catch up on almost 10 years worth of expansions to get into the game. With Destiny 2, it's like I have to go buy maybe 2 or 3 expansions to get back into the game, or at least understand what's happening. The onboarding process for Destiny 2 is going to be very difficult. It's near impossible to get, into the onboard. It's going to be very difficult for them. Probably not impossible, but onboarding new players into Destiny 2 is going to be extraordinarily difficult. And I hope they can figure out a system to make that work. World of Warcraft, credit where credit is due. I did hear that they are very good at getting people onboarded a little bit quicker. Final Fantasy 14, I think, is a bit more difficult because it's so story focused, which is not a bad thing. I think that's very good. Final Fantasy is very story focused, and that's a very good thing. But the fact is that, starting from the beginning of the story to the end, I think it's very important. It's very important for players to start from beginning to end in that story, and it's very hard for them to change the onboarding process, because apparently once you get past a certain point in Final Fantasy 14, people love the game, which is good. But I don't know what the future is going to hold for Bungie and Destiny. They really have to make this game appeal to a more casual player base, and they have to support Marathon, and they have to find a way to make money now that they're under Sony Interactive Entertainment. They're losing their autonomy, so they have to find out a way to make more money. It's going to be very interesting to see where Bungie is going to end up in the next couple years. I think they're still going to be a multi-platform developer. I think they'd be stupid to not be a multi-platform developer. I don't know if their games are going to come to Xbox. But they're definitely going to come to PC and PlayStation. They'd be stupid not to put them on PC and PlayStation, or on PC, because of how the industry is these days. And to reiterate, game development costs have gone up because salaries have gone up, and the cost of living has gone up where those developers live. And that in turn means that, the more people they have to pay, the bigger salaries they have to pay, game development costs are rising. And, developers are something's going to have to change in the industry. And I don't know what it is. But this has been a theme throughout the gaming industry for the last year or so. We've been hearing about, rising dev costs, and there's no growth in the industry. And unfortunately, the people at the bottom are the ones suffering for this. Sony and Microsoft should have found a way a long time ago to sell their consoles to more people. They should have found a better way to open up their, to sell hundreds of millions of more consoles than just to sell it to the same 130 million people that they do every console generation, or 180 million. And they haven't. And, PC is a different ecosystem, but it's still growing. So there's some nuance there. Yeah, there was a rumor recently that Microsoft, I think from Jez Corden, Microsoft is creating a small studio inside Blizzard to make, smaller games based on Blizzard franchises. I think that's a great idea. I love smaller games. You guys see me play smaller games on stream. I played The Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown a couple months ago. It was a wonderful game. It had its issues, but it was wonderful. I like smaller games. Sometimes smaller games are where it's at. I don't think every game needs to be a big AAA game at all. I like those smaller games, and I think it's going to be very important for developers to sell those smaller games to an audience over the next couple of years, because making a big AAA game, yes, they're still going to be around, but making them is going to be it's going to keep getting more difficult every console generation. Every time we get better hardware, it's going to get more difficult, because developers want to expand their imagination of what they can do in the game world. And that's going to cause, it's going to have more people needing to come in and help develop the game and test the game, and you got to market it. It's getting more and more complex. And unfortunately, Bungie is also a victim of this. I really do miss the old Bungie days, though. Oh man, it's the old Bungie days. Those were the days. Halo 2 and Halo 3. So good. So good. But yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the layoffs at Bungie. Again, I hope everyone who was laid off, I hope they land on their feet soon. I'm hoping the industry gets back on a path towards a little bit of growth so everyone can get, a job in the industry. I hope new studios form from this, and I hope we see, more innovative titles, even if they're smaller indie games, or maybe even, games that are just below, AA games or whatever. I don't care. I hope everyone lands on their feet so they don't have to worry about where their next paycheck comes from. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today.